So I was just saying, this is something that interests me quite a lot. It's using low technology to solve problems that we tend to solve with high technology. And there's a few little projects that I've implemented which surprisingly work. So I'm sort of more encouraged to, even though I'm not a very good do-it-yourself person, but to try doing some more. So I just wanted to share some of these concepts and some of these things that I know work. There's a really interesting site called Build It Solar, which, as it says, is the renewable energy site for do-it-yourselfers. So a lot of the information that I get related to solar energy things is here. I think it's a really good site. One of the projects which I'm hoping to work on this summer in time for winter is to use solar power for heating. And I mean, to be honest, we already have a solar panel in our house for our hot water. But a commercial solar hot water panel that you buy is vacuum tubes, antifreeze liquid that goes through the system. Basically, it's very expensive and it requires regular maintenance, which is not necessarily that cheap. But the advantage of that vacuum tube technology is that it gets the water very hot. So it gets the water above 80 degrees, which is the legal requirement for sanitary hot water, for the hot water that you use in your showers, etc. But if I want hot water just for heating, for instance, just to heat up the room, I don't need it to get to that temperature. I'm never going to need my room to be at 70 degrees or something like that.
Nor your shower. You need to soak yourself.
No, but it's
why is it a requirement to
to prevent bacteria and things, to kill the bugs. Yeah. So if you need hot water for heating, you don't need it to get to that temperature. That means you don't need vacuum tube technology. That means you can do things simpler. And for instance, these do-it-yourselfers, there are different ways of doing this. It really depends how you want to distribute the heat. But basically the collector, the science of a collector is quite simple. You need a sort of a panel, a box, that has a clear cover that allows the light to come in, and you need some black absorptive surface at the back, which can be just painted black. And you need it a little bit insulated so that the heat that's generated from absorbing the heat is kept in the box. And then you have two essential ways of transmitting that heat to where you want to go. If you are lucky enough that the wall on which you want to place these panels is the exterior wall of the space you want to heat, as in this case, then you can simply use a simple air connection. So you just open a hole in the bottom, open a hole in the top through the wall, and auto-siphoning effect will take the hot air into the house and the cold air through, right? And the cold air through. Yeah, that's very simple. If you
without
need
putting a fan.
Convection. Yeah. So the hot air will rise at the top, pulling the cold air at the bottom, and it will make a convection current within inside the house.
What's the material?
So then materials is where you come to some of the advantages that come. So I say it's a low-tech solution, but that doesn't mean that it can't use modern materials. So the traditional material you would use is glass, and glass is perfectly fine. The only problem with glass is that it's heavy. So if you want to make panels, that means it's heavy. That means to hang them on the walls, it's heavier, and everything is heavy. And then also glass. Glass is fragile; it can break. So if you have a storm or tree branch falls or hail or whatever, it can break. Of course, you can get shatterproof glass, but then it's thicker, more expensive. It has a film in it, etc. So nowadays we have plastics, different plastics that we can use, and the typical one that is used is ¿cómo se llama? No, not Perspex. It's too early in the morning and having caffeine. The name escapes me, but it's the one. It's the plastic one that they use on all the greenhouses and things like that. Yeah. So what happens is the problem with that plastic is actually especially that it's not UV stable. On its own, it'll go yellow and brittle. But you can buy it now with UV protective coatings. Okay. So what you do is you can use that, and that's much lighter, much simpler. It's shatterproof. It's not going to break just because something little touches it, etc. Yeah. So it's a way in which you can, reduce the weight and the cost of the panel. So
Do
it's simpler.
you have any order of magnitude in terms of cost? Cost per square meter, per watt, and size of these panels?
Well, yeah. The per watt depends on where you are located. So geographically and in which direction you can face your panel, because obviously. A lot of these examples from Build It Solar are in North America, Canada.
Per peak watt, the maximum watt.
Well, it depends on your solar
Not the capacity of the panel, not the actual generation, but the maximum.
No, but there is no maximum because you are extracting the heat. So it's not like a solar electrical panel that has a maximum amount of light that it can convert into electricity. It's not a photovoltaic panel, it's a heat panel. So it'll just keep on heating until either it burns, but you're not going to let it get that high because you're constantly extracting the heat. Okay. So the limit is dependent on the solar radiation in the geographical location in which you are and the angle at which you put the panel. If there's clouds, if there's no clouds, etc. But the amount of heat that you can extract is limited by the amount of heat that's incident on the panel. Yeah. And then the structure, it's usually a wooden frame with some sort of a foam or insulation backing, and as I said, the plastic front, and you paint the thing black. So I mean, it's however much it costs you to source those materials, but we're talking about $10 a square meter or something like that. Yeah? It's more the labor you put into putting the thing together, more than much more than.
But the efficiency is probably a lot lower than the photovoltaic, or not?
No, but it's not related because the photovoltaic is producing electricity. Here I'm trying to capture heat. With a photovoltaic cell, if I want to convert the light to electricity, I have losses. I probably get about 10% conversion. And then if I convert that electricity, I have to transmit that electricity and convert it to heat, I get another 90% loss. So I'm using probably 2% of the incident energy to produce heat.
So you say this is a lot higher efficiency?
This, I have some heat losses because I'm not a perfect insulator, and I'm not converting maybe, some of the light, even though you paint it black, but the glass reflects a little bit of the light and that, but you're probably getting 80%. So the difference is 80% to 2%.
How do you deliver then the heat?
So there's the two methods, as I said. If you are lucky enough that your panel is basically on the exterior wall of the area you want to heat, the simplest way is you just open up two holes, one in the bottom, one in the top, and natural convection will bring it in. If you have to get it a little bit further or you want more airflow, then you install a little inline fan, which you need to power by electricity. You could either put a solar cell on the outside or you just hook it into the wall. Yeah, but an inline fan is a very, very, very small user of electricity.
The size of the hole is pretty small.
Yeah, well, for airflow, you probably want something that's about something 10 centimeters. Yeah, 10 centimeter. What you would do, honestly, what you do with all these things is you use standard sizes, because then when you need to buy a PVC tube, or you want to buy an inline fan, or you want to do something else, you buy a tube like this. Whatever they sell in the shop is whatever you buy. The alternative, which is in my case, where I want to put up the panels, is not the exterior wall of the place I want to heat. Then the other option is to use water. So to use the panel to heat water. Yeah. So there are different methods of doing it. The more typical one, I don't know if I next picture. No, next picture something. The more typical one is that in these panels on the back, on the black, you basically have a zigzag of tubing, usually copper tubing, and then maybe with some aluminium. It can be aluminium foil or something just put over it. The whole thing painted black, so that basically the absorber is a system of tubing that heats up, and therefore as the water circulates through it, it heats up. And that water, once you've got warm water, you pump it to wherever you want in the house, and you have a radiator, and you radiate the heat. Yeah. advantages of the water is that the water heat can be stored. So typically you have a water tank somewhere and you accumulate the heat during the day and then you can release it where and when you want it. With the hot air, you basically get the hot air heating during the day, which is not necessarily when you want it. So it depends. If you're in Canada, North America or Northern Europe, then often you have bright sunny winter days, but it's freezing inside. So if you have a wall that basically faces the winter sun, then it's perfect and you can heat up during the day and you can reduce the amount of heating you have to do during the day.
Problem with the water during the winter when there is like a -20 in Finland, for
It
example,
freezes.
It freezes, so it's kind of then it gets more difficult to fit in because you need to make sure that it's all the time
running or that it
all
has
the
a
time.
drain safe,
Yes.
so it doesn't exactly. So the water, that's where different things have different complications. So in the very cold climates, the air is most useful because you are wanting to heat during the day. So you're wanting to use that heat during the day, and it's the simplest and the safest and the least technically complicated solution. In climates more like ours, where we're warmer, typically, for instance, in summer you never want to heat. Usually what happens is it's at winter or also in the spring and the autumn when sometimes you have very warm days but the nights get chilly, like happens here. We have the heating on here last time, where the day is very warm. So in that case, it's when you want to consider using water because then you can store the heat during the day and then release it at night. Yeah. So most of these panels, they have the tubing, which for me is a problem because as a do-it-yourselfer, if I have to connect copper tubing already, that involves welding.
Copper is very expensive.
Copper is expensive. The panel becomes quite heavy, etc. So the experiment I'm going to make this summer, hopefully, if I have some spare time, is to construct one of these panels essentially as an air panel, so heating the air. But in the top of the panel, instead of having air connections and sucking the air, in the top of the panel, I'm gonna, I've actually already ordered them off eBay and they arrived from Hong Kong. The little heat exchangers that they use in computers. So you have in the PC towers, you usually have a fan, and then there's a little radiator box there that has a little bit of tubing for the water-cooled ones. The more. So I'm just going to stick one of those little units in the top of the box and circulate my water through there.
One of my friends has, in Finland everyone has a summer cottage. That's kind of must have. So we have our home and then summer cottage. And they have a small pool there for the summer use.
And they use
and he has just put the black plastic like a
tubing,
to the roof of the small building next to it.
Yeah.
And then it circulates there and warms the
Warms
water.
it. That's a very
enough. So it's a very cheap, very easy thing to do, and it works for that kind of purpose.
It works, yeah. The issue with that, I mean, and that is the most simple, to just take the black plastic tubing. The problem is with that one is, and the way he's got it at the moment is it's not insulated, so a lot of the heat that gets on there just gets radiated. If you were to put that plastic tubing in an insulated box where that box is maybe getting up to 70 degrees or something like that.
You would put the glass over it or whatever to make it in a box and then circulate and that.
It works a lot better. The problem is that many of those plastics degrade much faster at those temperatures. And so it's always and this is where the technology of materials comes in. That the more selection you have of materials, the more you can play with and get simple solutions to do that sort of thing. But yeah, for heating pools, here not that many people have pools to heat in that, for instance, we don't. But yeah, that's a very simple to do, like a coil of the tube, put it in a box and use that to heat the pool.
And at night, with the holes, how do you do that? If it's very cold at night, and you have the holes in the windows.
So what you usually do is you have
insulated from the
the panels are sitting on your outside wall. You have two holes into them, and it's true, what happens is as soon as the sun goes down and those panels cool, you don't want the air circulating outside, So it's quite simple. You have flaps that open only one way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when the when the convection current is going, the air will go in from the top and out from the bottom.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
You don't
And
want-
so you put the flaps to go this way, and then at night, when the cycle would reverse because the hot air is inside, the flaps close.
Okay.
What if it's getting too hot during the day and you want to actually disable that?
Then what you do is you can close. You have to manually close the flaps, but then what you have to have is you have to build your panel with an that you can open it, because otherwise it will overheat. Yeah. So well, it depends what your materials. But it's what they call stagnation, yeah, which is the same with your solar panels things. If they stagnate, then the temperatures in there can rise, and depending on the materials that you use for the construction, you may get problems. Yeah, if you've made it out of wood and glass, nothing's going to happen. But if you've got plastics, insulation, paints, the silicon sealant, all those sorts of things, they don't really take very well to extended periods of high temperatures. They start to deform. So this is one example.
Can you understand your computer cooler? That's
Yeah.
not going to be enough for your house. I mean, for the circulating. You're buying this computer cooler to circulate the air.
No. The computer cooler is a water one.
Right.
Yeah. So it takes a little bit of water and it passes through. Yeah, but you have to realize that the panel, if you are doing that all
Is
day.
enough to heat up your house or your?
Well, one panel is not going to be enough to heat up my house. But if I have 6 panels,
So you're putting one of those coolers on each panel.
yeah, because you have the panel. I'm going to make it, because your option is either you have the tubing all through the panel, right? But then that's expensive, heavy, etc. Or you have a heat exchanger at the top of the panel that heat exchanges from air to water. Yeah. So, but in that case, what you want is the heat to accumulate at the top. So my idea is to create a long, thin panel, because then all the heat, if you've got 2 square meters, but if it's configured like this, then you get more concentration of heat at the top. A heat exchanger is always more effective the bigger the differential is between heat. So if I've got, let's say, if I want my water to get to 40 degrees, I need my air to be at 55, 60, yeah, to work. So I want the air at the top of that panel to be hot, so that will therefore maximize the heat of the water, which I then take to my tank. So during the day, I'm heating up the water, and then at night, I release it in the house. This is another very simple technology, which is that when you actually do heat up a room, however you eventually heat it up, usually you have quite a large differential, and usually the rooms are not configured in such a way that there is a natural convection that really does a lot of good mixing. Yeah. So in many houses, if you find that you are cold, even though you've been pumping a lot of heat into the room, you can take 2 thermometers, and sometimes there's 10 to 15 degrees of difference between the ceiling and the floor. So if you were to mix all that volume, you switch off the fire because the thing is right there. So this is an ugly installation, but it shows the basic principle. You just take a clear PVC tube and you put an inline fan at the bottom, and that's it. It's a very low-tech solution that can save you a large amount of energy, because the energy to run that fan is nothing like the energy that you use with your electric or wood or whatever powered heater. Yeah. This can be hidden in a wall or behind a cupboard or wherever.
One gas. It's only the tube, nothing else.
It's just a tube. It's just to suck the hot air from the top and bring it down to the bottom and mix it.
I was going to ask, what direction are you blowing? Are you blowing cold air up, or are you sucking hot air?
Sucking the hot air down usually. Yeah. Yeah. Because what you want is you want to mix the hot air, really. So you want it to mix so that, and the point is that the more the air is mixed, the less it is stratified, the less it also doesn't accumulate up. When
Yeah.
the hot air moves up, when when there's a big difference, you know, when you have by the fire, the air is at 40 degrees and the surrounding air is at 18, then all that hot air goes straight up.
Yeah.
But if the differentials in the air is less, then you get
Or
less.
maybe you probably work equally well the other way around.
Yeah.
If you blow the cold air up, then that air displaces the hot air, which has to go somewhere. So, no, maybe not.
Yeah, but I think what tends to happen is, you know, if you're sucking the hot air from the very top, because the hot air is gathering up there, you're getting it. If you were to blow the cold air up here, the cold air would come up here and would fall back down. It would create sort of currents, but it would not necessarily,
Yeah,
it wouldn't necessarily get to the other end of the room.
yeah.
I think, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, but in all the diagrams I've seen, they always suck it down. So I assume someone worked out that that works better. This is a totally different example. It's for cooking. So this is, I don't know if you guys cook, but if you do or you think to, whenever there are some things that you cook, for instance, we would cook probably once a week or once every 2 weeks at home lentils. You have to cook them for a few hours. You know, it's a low heat, but a few hours. And what I find is that the day I'm cooking lentils, I mean, my kitchen is incredibly warm because even though I've only got it on setting 2 or something, the amount of heat that radiates from your pot is quite. And I once actually went out and looked. I didn't have anything else running unusual, just my hot plate. And I went out and looked at the electricity counter, and it takes a fair, you know, from just the thing. So. And what's very interesting is you actually don't need all that heat. It's basically heat in, heat out, heat in, heat out. When you have it at that low setting, you're essentially just replacing the heat that's being lost. So you are essentially just heating your kitchen doing that. So what these things are like, it's just a bean bag, you know, sort of bean bag that you sit in. So you just make a small bean bag with a lid. What you do is you boil, you bring your pot of lentils to the boil, you stick it in there, you put it on, and you wait the same amount of 3 or 4 hours, and you take it out, and it's cooked. Because a lot of the cooking way we do, we simply are replacing the heat that is being lost from.
Just a heat-proof bag.
If you just insulate your cooking utensils, then you can dramatically reduce the amount of heat that you use. And I mean, this for us is a nice thing, but not that critical. But you know, in places where they spend a lot of money and a lot of energy on heating for cooking, you know, this is a significant issue, and it's a low-tech solution that can help people reduce a lot of food. Basically, you bring your food to the boil, rice, lentils, all those things that many people spend a lot of time cooking and a lot of fuel energy cooking. It doesn't need that much fuel, because mainly what you're doing is replacing it that's being lost.
Without heat. Without heat.
It's an actual bean bag.
It's a bean bag, styrofoam bean bag. I mean, they sell it in a configuration that it fits a pot, but you can buy the beans and put it in.
I mean, the fabric has to be able to withstand the temperature of a very hot pot without burning or melting.
Yeah, but for instance, I don't know, cotton.
Cotton.
Well, an iron isn't any colder than your.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you make your gloves of, that you pick up your pot, but I pick up a pot with a cotton tea towel.
Yeah, with the towel.
So, and this is the last example, and I wanted to actually show a picture of the pump that I built, but the internet here doesn't go, and I can't get to my Amazon Drive to download the picture. But this was, I'm sorry, there was another thing that I didn't. The first project that I built, it was actually from this website, and I didn't manage to download a picture of it, but it was to dry firewood. So one of the problems we have is we have a wood fire at home, and I don't know how many of you have burnt a wood fire, but if the wood is not very dry, then it's not very effective. The problem here when you order wood in this country is it's the wood that was cut last week or last month or yeah. They don't have this thing of having stored it for a minimum of a year or 2 years before you buy it. Okay, so it comes to you with the leaves still on it, and yeah, and it's not ideal for putting into the fire that winter because you spend most of the energy of the wood burning the water that's in the wood. So the question is, and the problem is that we don't have the room to store 2 seasons of wood, because then we could do it. You know, we could order 2 seasons, you know, and then you start, but we don't have that room. So what we want to do is order the wood like we're ordering now at the beginning of summer, and store it over summer, but we want to maximize the drying that happens over summer. Yeah? So essentially what we built is a little, like a greenhouse. So the area where we store the wood, but with a transparent wall and transparent ceiling, but with a gap at the bottom and a gap at the top. So essentially the greenhouse heats and creates a convection current that circulates air. So you are essentially warming and air drying the wood for the whole summer. Yeah? And we found that made a huge difference to the wood. If we left some wood just normally under cover, not under rain, but just under cover. But normally when you have it under cover, it's also under shade. So it's not really heating up or drying. Yeah? Usually you stick the wood in some cool covered area. And there's a huge difference that we get. I mean, the wood that we take out of that, it's just you put it in the fire and it catches. And the other one doesn't. Yeah?
What the heck are you getting at?
No, I mean the wood will always reabsorb some.
Yeah, well,
But-
not as much. When you can produce the first, then it's not the same.
No.
So it doesn't suck.
It
Doesn't
doesn't.
worry. That's it's already like the system that we have, because we have cold winters, cold and dry winters, is that when you have those outside on the winter time, it dries the wood.
Because the air is dry in winter
Because
time.
the air is dry that time, and then you can use them in the next summer. So it basically takes a year, but still you can do it outside. And also the same system, just like to get it, even if it's open, even if you don't have a glass here, but if it's outside on this situation and the air circulates there, and that you have not put them so that they are next to each other, but
No, you
just
have to
allow
allow the
It's
airflow.
better if they're just like a drone somewhere that the air circulates in between.
Yeah. So the advantage of these things, I mean, the people who built these things are in Canada and places like that that have similar winters, is that it gets a higher temperature and an increased airflow.
Yeah.
And so you just accelerate the process.
Very
So that was the first one that I built, and it worked, so we were really happy. And then this is the other thing that we did, which is, so this is a company in Australia, I think it is, that commercializes it. But we have in our garden, we have an old well, a deep well that was disused, didn't have a pump on it or anything. And we planted in our garden quite a few fruit trees, and of course in the summer they need to be watered. And then we started to get these ridiculous water bills, because once you go above your 1 cubic meter that you're allowed per month, then the price suddenly goes something ridiculous. So we said that is ridiculous, because for the amount of money that we're paying for water, we can buy truckloads of organic fruit, you know, way more than the amount that we're actually going to get from these 4 little fruit trees that we've planted. So the equation didn't work. So then we asked for some quotes to install a pump on the well, because it's 30 meters down. You know, you're not going to go with a bucket every day. 3,000 euros, 4,000 euros, and that's without including the electrician who has to come and put the 3-phase power to power it and all the crap like that. So I said, again, if I'm going to spend 5,000 euros, I might as well just go out and buy the organic fruit. I'm going to pave over the garden, and you know, it just doesn't compute. So I said, no, there's got to be. I said, I felt that, you know, people have been pumping water for the last 5,000 years or longer. There must be something. The hole is already dug. The difficult thing must be to dig the hole. It shouldn't be that difficult to get the water out. So looking around on the internet, all sorts of different pumps and systems and things like this, I came across this. The problem is that you can't really get anywhere clear. You can get diagrams of the principle, which is this. So this is basically the principle where you're using air to pump, compressed air to pump the water up. So basically, there are different ways of doing it, more or less effective, and obviously you want to try and get the most efficient method possible. So generally the concept is this, that you have down at the bottom of the well, you have something that doesn't necessarily look exactly like this, but in principle works like this. So you have an air chamber. Basically when you first stick the thing down, what you find is there's an inlet tube here with a one-way valve, okay, that lets the water in. So when you put the thing first down in, obviously the water pressure, this is not exactly well shown, but if you put this into the water, so let's say the well water, well yeah, they've shown, if the well water comes to here, yeah, then what happens is the pressure of the water will push the water in and fill this chamber, okay? Once it's filled this chamber, what you have to do is pump air in, okay? That air will displace the water, because this is a one-way valve, this closes, and so the water displaces up the tube. Yeah? It displaces up the tube, up the tube, up the tube, until it gets down to here, the air, and then what will happen is the air will escape up the tube, and a bubble will go up the tube. That releases the air pressure in here, and this valve opens again and refills the chamber. So you get a pulse. You get a chunk of water followed by a bubble. Another chunk of water followed by a bubble. Yeah? And essentially, the trick is that the bubble obviously has to be big enough that the water, or the tube narrow enough that the water doesn't fall back down around the bubble. So essentially the bubbles push the plugs of water up the pump. Yeah? There's some great advantages to this pump. Everything that is down at the bottom of the pump, the only moving part is this one-way valve. That's the only moving part. Yeah? As opposed to the typical electrical pumps that are in the bottom, where the whole electrical pump, all the moving parts, all the electrical things and an electrical wire are going down into the water. Here, this is all plastic tubing, and this is a simple one-way ball valve. Yeah? The disadvantage is that your water comes out spurting. Water, air, water, air. So if you need to feed that into a distribution tube network, that doesn't work because you get But in our case, because our land is on a slope, and we have the well near the top, what we do is we're simply pumping into a tank, and from that tank we gravity feed the rest of the garden. So we don't have an issue that it's coming out in spurts, as long as, because the air gets released and the water falls into the tank. Yeah? So I wanted to show you a picture because, as I said, the cost that we got quoted for installing an electrical pump, which would have needed maintenance every X years, which would have required someone to come and pull the whole thing up, and would have been, 500 euros minimum maintenance every few years. So instead of paying 4,000 euros, the materials I had to pay to construct this thing, and the tubing, I bought 50 meters of flexible irrigation tubing to go down the well, so I can pull the thing up if I need to. All those materials cost me 70 euros. And then I had a little compressor that we used for painting, which had cost me 100 euros. And we plugged it in and it worked. The thing is that compressor to pump the water had to go for about an hour or an hour and a half, and the compressor is only designed to work for 10 minutes at a time. So we ended up buying a bigger compressor for 220 euros, which works. So for less than 300 euros, and the compressor plugs into the wall, is above ground. If anything breaks or anything like that, I fix it, or even if I have to replace the compressor every 5 years, it's still going to be cheaper than calling a maintenance man. And that worked, and it's very simple. And there's some nice videos and YouTubes and things you can see on the web of people using this sort of pump. compressed air through a very long tube. So you can see where, for instance, one of the problems often is running electricity out to where the pump is. But you don't have to run electricity. You can run air. So you can have the compressor plugged in at the house, and you can very easily run 200 meters of air, out to